Staggering numbers there. Joining me now with reaction is ranking member on House Budget, Congressman Jason Smith, and FreedomWorks economist Steve Moore. Congressman, I'm going to go ahead and start with you. We do know we were in an emergency. It was a pandemic we hadn't seen the likes of in 100 years. So a lot of programs were rolled out to help Americans initially within the first year, within 2020, before vaccines were rolled out as well. So we know the fraud was across the board, the Paycheck Protection Program, unemployment insurance, and other things as well, as Connell was describing there. But having said that, the pandemic continued then into 2021, defined by the new administration, and it even continued into 2022. So did we not prolong the period for all of this fraud to occur?
Jackie, fraud has been rampant. This report says $45 billion. I think that's just a small number of exactly where it is. It's reported by many that it's hundreds of billions of dollars. House Republicans, when they were trying to pass this legislation, put into place numerous proposals to try to prevent this fraud. House Democrats refused it, right and left. And I can tell you, just this week in the House Ways and Means Committee, we had a resolution to ask the administration to give us more transparency in numbers of how much fraud and how many people have been frauding the government. The Democrats voted straight party lines in refusing us to have that information. But you know what? It's not just fraud, it's waste. Yeah. There's billions of dollars in checks going to prisoners, to illegals, to dead people, to Japanese citizens. And we tried to put safeguards in place. Democrats refused to allow that to be passed.
And Steve, I want to get your reaction on this as well. At a time when we're experiencing inflation at a 40-year record high and Americans are struggling and they're wondering why goods and services cost so much and why basically a month of their paycheck for the entire year is being eaten up by inflation, when they hear staggering numbers like this, that their taxpayer dollars essentially have evaporated, disappeared in thin air. I mean, it's infuriating to many.
You better believe it. By the way, Jason Smith is right. That number that you're quoting, $45 billion, I agree with Congressman Smith. I think the number is multiple times higher than that. And I, too, have seen reports of over $100 billion in fraud from this program. Wow. You have fraud rates in these programs, Jackie, whether it's the Medicaid program, Medicare, whether it's food stamps, whether it's unemployment benefits, PPP program. If you add it up, I estimate about $250 billion. Now, here is, you I think, used the word infuriating. The most infuriating thing to me, and by the way, a lot of that money, as the congressman just said, it didn't even go to Americans. It went to people living in Mexico, fraudsters, in Mexico, in China, in Russia, in Poland. All these people from all these other countries are getting this money. So it didn't even stimulate the American economy. But here's the thing. When I testified on this, Jackie, about 2 months ago, before I think it was the Budget Committee, and I brought this up with the Democrats, they just said, that's just the cost of doing business. I'm like, come on.
Really?
The fraud rates are 20% in these programs. In the private sector, they're 2%. And when Jason Smith, I hope he becomes the next chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, Congressman, you need to do audits, forensic audits. We need to put these people in jail who stole this money.
Congressman, a lot of people are calling for that, so I want you to respond to it. But also, I want you to respond to the figure that Connell threw out, that while we're dealing with all this fraud on one hand, there are requests for $22 billion more in COVID relief a year and a half after the pandemic is over.
We got people who are trying to run this country that is only ruining this economy. They think they can spin themselves out of inflation and tax their way out of recession. It's a disaster. And that is why the American people is going to rise up, and they are tired of this one-party Democrat rule. And when we take back the House, Jackie, the House Ways and Means Committee owes the American people exactly what they're asking for. They want accountability. They want direct oversight of this administration over the IRS, especially with this doubling of the IRS with $80 billion and hiring 87,000 IRS agents. They want accountability, and the House Republicans are going to make this government held accountable for all of these inappropriate actions.
Yeah, there's sort of an irony there, right? That the administration wants to bulk up the IRS and go after the average American when the average American is saying we want to see an accounting of what you've done here.
Right.
Gentlemen, so great to see you both tonight. We are out of time, but we'll have you back soon. Congressman Jason Smith
Thanks,
and Steve Moore.